On a number this year more than usual. There's a couple more. One's integrating patient-reported outcomes into practice, a framework for enhancing clinical effective and professional growth. So that's about our growth at Johns Hopkins and collecting and leveraging, patient-reported outcomes and really moving to promise and away from some of our other body system location or more specific measures. And the last one is what to expect when and from implementing the Johns Hopkins Activity and Mobility Promotion Program, a facilitated discussion with experts, and it has a number of kind of multidisciplinary providers from several different facilities, including physicians, researchers, and PTs. So they all have kind of a theme, like a theme or a pillar of data involved.
Something I think is really cool for us, just as we're listening here in this small group, the number of proposals that were submitted that were related to informatics in different ways. And I bring that up just from the fact of, and I know that there were additional ones that were submitted just from some of what I'm aware of in the background. But I bring that up because, if you went back even 5 years ago, the number of topics related to informatics, there may have been a few of them at CSM, but I just think that the numbers have been increasing, and just really appreciate, one, everybody who submitted, and two, just the variety of topics. It's just pretty cool, so.
I do. That's a good, I'm glad you point that out. Sorry, I'll stop talking a second, but I just think it's interesting that it's true, and in many cases, the word informatics not being used. And that's okay. I do think it's food for thought as we work with the APTA, Bob, you and others, whether there should be additional tags related to that word, so we can help folks find those things who are looking for it in some way with subsequent submissions.
So related to that, listening to you, Bob, it occurs to me that we've had different conversations among ourselves, subsets of us and all of us, about how informatics either makes people's eyes glaze over or run from the room for many folks because they're afraid of what they think it means. Mm-hmm. And so it occurs to me that, having, well, it's too late for submissions now, I believe, but, mm-hmm. demystifying the word just by even having an infographic. So once we know what sessions have been accepted, not only having tags, but maybe having an infographic or something that says, this is informatics, in some way, and you're already doing it and you already know it. And it's not a foreign to you, that maybe we should leverage that somehow.
Sure, if there's a way to do that, even from last year's presentations at CSM, and to do something with the list of different topics and the such, I don't know.
I mean, it'd be interesting to go back. You mentioned several years where it's one or two, to maybe link all of those and say, look, all of this is informatics, whether we call it informatics or not, or but I like this idea of having an some sort of demystification, whether it's by a graphic or connections or whatever. But great idea, Dion.
So does that fit into one of the subgroups? Sam, I'm going to let you think.
Yeah, it sounds like we already have a proposal preparing right now for next year. At the same time, we're brainstorming a subgroup or subcommittee, as we call it, but we're not married to those words. But to Bob's point, I think that could be a group in which we can focus on that product. Seems like it could come different ways, like a white paper or some sort of some collaborative session where we can actually put a product out there to understand what to the larger audience, what is informatics. And even though we've written a paper around the using concept analysis, I think we still need to keep fostering and keep dialoguing this discussion, because anytime we say informatics, they're like, I want a definition. I want exactly what you mean by this. And I think we get into this weed of like getting lost with these technical words in the details. So yeah. Deanne.
Well, so Matt and I haven't reconnected in quite a while to talk about our start and stop effort to start drafting some kind of perspective paper on the topic. We have very bare bones about it, but it also occurs to me that even position pieces, I bet if we were to ask PTJ, what's the click open rate on position pieces as opposed to how do I take care of this patient who has this problem? I'm guessing there's likely to be some imbalance there. I don't know. But my point being simply that I don't think we should hesitate to just really be much more friendly about it. And by friendly, I don't mean dumbing it down. I just mean that there are people walking around with this stuff, doing these things that don't even know to call it that.
Mhm.
Because I think informatics for a lot of people immediately segues to software
Mhm.
and analytic systems and people who have SQL skills.
Yeah.
And what they miss is that it's about information, and it's about systematic collection of information and systematic thinking about information and how to make that connect with other people doing the same work. So I think, I would offer that it's probably a both and, but that's
Yeah.
what I was noodling on.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So how do we carry this forward? And I know we're bouncing back on the agenda back and forth, but this sounds like a great project, a great subgroup to get together and get a paper written or an infographic or something that. How do we move it to the next step instead of it just being conversation?
I think we move it from a conversation to a work group. But I think many of the people here have stuff they could contribute to that.
Well, I'm happy to dive in. Bob, you have a great point that we don't have to wait until we get the announcement or what the agenda is for this CSM. We could go back and look, and just even if it's just for us to sort of formulate our ideas about how we might communicate it. And I'm happy to do that if somebody wants to be a partner in crime or partners in crime.
So do we send out this work group that Roland talks about, and it sounds like Deanne's willing to sort of lead?
Deanne just got volunteered.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, I trust me. I know what it means to speak up and say I have an idea, and then to walk away from it and let everyone.
What did I just do?
So I'm not going to be that human.
But does it? So is it using the website? And thank you, Madeline, for getting the website to the next step. And just so everybody knows, if you go to rehabinformatics.org, you'll see the website. So it points back to the Google site that Madeline created, but it's a lot easier to find. So just a huge kudos there. Thank you, Madeline. Is it going there and using the collaborate and getting the group, or do we create the work group? Is it just people raising their hand? I saw Marilyn raise her hand and Roland raise his, and Steve, I'm sure, was raising his, but I didn't quite see it go up. But how do we, is it just, Deanne, do you want to just contact the people, or do people want to write to Deanne, or how do we get it to the work group status?
Well, I'm assuming I have Marilyn and Steve's emails via the announcement of this meeting. So I will send an email to the two of you, and we can, and three of you, sorry, Roland.
No
and
problem.
we can figure out how we want to parse it out. I mean, I would say we're gonna need to look, we can figure out how to parse it out, and we can figure out a time to chat among ourselves, either asynchronously or in real time. Does that sound okay?
Cool. I like it.
Perfect.
I also am going to send out a link, and this is on a topic a little bit earlier, that shows how humor is a great way to communicate. And I think we're, as a profession, as are most medical professions, physicians and such, we're caught up in being professionals, and we forget the power of humor. I'd worked on a project with the USC School of Communications where we studied best communications, a storytelling one, a brochure, one of those, what do you call those, comics stories, the illustrated stories. And the one that won, and it was a national award, was storytelling with humor. So I'll send that link to y'all. And maybe I think that attracts audience's attention. I guess that's my point.
Any different ways that we can get the word out there, I think is valuable and powerful. Sam, do we have anything more regarding going back to the first couple of things on the agenda? And I know I'm jumping in here a little bit. Sorry, Jen and Sam, anyway, if you guys want to, at whatever point, it's fine, or Madeline, whatever. Just going back to the annual status check and the meeting time and format and days. Thoughts?
Yeah, before we dive into the meeting times, yeah, Brad, what is the informatics website? We have it somewhere. It should be here. I'm going to post it. It's rehabinformatics.org. What I would suggest is, like, as we're peppering up these ideas, whether it's a perspective paper or maybe it's like half-baked, I would say share those ideas in the group, the Google group that we have internally, so that everybody can have a kind of a set their eyes on it. Because I think we have about 12 of us today, but there might be some people who were already working on some of this idea. So let's get them connected and get them involved as well. I would say if it would be helpful, Deanne, we can help you with the administrative aspect of it. Sometimes it can get kind of convoluted with selecting or reaching out to certain individuals. So if you want to make it a kind of a public to rest of the group, hey, I want to start this group, I'm going to start it, and these are the people who are going to be involved, we can help you with that, or you can kind of start that conversation in the thread. In fact, anybody who has any idea could do that. I think they should be able to respond and create this idea, and we can we'll work on the back end to kind of formalize that group. And then the way that you guys will connect within those groups will be on your own, but we can at least get the announcements.
So I guess for myself, I've already scoured to get email addresses, and I was about to send my partners in crime an email to start a let's find a time conversation. I think for me, at least to start with, it's easy to start with a small group, which is not that we're going to be all secretive about it, but to organize our thoughts around what we are trying to say and then bring it to the larger group or groups to react to, if that's okay with everybody. Does that work? Let's see if you nod. A thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Perfect.
totally.
All right.
Yeah, you just tell us when you're ready. If you,
Okay.
if you wanna, totally. And I actually would be interested if you're gonna talk about the education piece, because I work with residents and DPT learners quite a bit, so always trickling back. So Stephen, I put a link there. See if you can get that. Oh, does it work? Okay, perfect.
Oh.
Awesome. We're like, we should have a domain. It should work.
Yeah, I sent it without the full domain information. Sorry about that if you were trying that.
Yeah, and another thing, a logistical thing that we want to capture today is the meeting times.
Hey, Sam, before we do that, for anybody who's on the Rehab Informatics page, if you go to the Collaborate tab at the top, Inside the Collaborate tab, there is an informatics folder, but there's also the informatics Google group. If you click on that informatics Google group, that's where you can create a new conversation and send it out to everybody, just so that you know. And again, thank you, Madeline, for putting all that together.
Yeah. Huge help.
Go ahead, Sam, sorry.
Oh, no, so the meeting times, you know, we're meeting once a month, I believe we're on third week. And we wanted to get a sense whether this time works best for everyone. I know it's a year ago we pulled out a poll, and this seems like the most common time, but just getting a sense if this still is a good time for everyone to meet. If you had a better time, if you meet on Tuesday, Monday, Friday, and the time still work at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern.
My guess, Sam, is that this time works great for the 12 of us that are here. And it's probably the people that are not here that really have an opinion.
I also want to acknowledge, you know, some of the participants and our members are clinicians, like seeing patients, and this is really rough time for, especially in the West Coast folks. 9 o'clock is the prime spot. So I don't know if it's like we want to respect the East Coast time. So we were toying with this idea, maybe doing it much later, but then it'll be like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock your time, Kelly, and that's like, I don't know, that's after dinner, and so we sort of have to balance things out, where, you know, if there's any ideas that we can be more inclusive.
Could maybe this might help, is that I know y'all are recording these. And if those could be, are those easily emailable? Are they something that's on the website? Because then they could partake in the information, although not the conversation.
Yeah.
So on the website, if you go to the resources tab, just so that everybody knows, on that resources tab, you'll see the meeting recordings there with the different dates. CT's is not up here yet, I was just noticing, but most of the other ones are here. So again, just so that you know about that option.
Sam, I'd recommend polling all of us, you know, the 41 or so, and just try to get the best spot that would get the most of us together.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we'll probably we'll circle this back and get that squared away. We'll probably organize the video recordings a little bit more. I know it's just like a scroll down all the way with a bunch of videos of recording of the past. So and we would like to get some feedback too with the content. If there's any additional you have an idea about putting certain resources in the page, please email us, because this is an ongoing effort collaboratively.
I think the big piece is, how do we build it out and make this valuable to you as well as to others? And so with that, or whether, so if you have somebody who you think would be a great speaker, right? Maybe that's it. If you think that we need to every other month have more conversation like this and fewer speakers, we need to know that as well, just so that we can get it set up again. So this is most valuable, and so it carries forward on a go forward basis. Related to that, if there's projects, recommended resources, we've talked about some things in the past, we just haven't really carried them forward to a work group. And that's a little bit, I think, why we were pushing, for how do we take action with this idea instead of it just being an idea. And related to that, other resources or projects, thoughts? Kelly, I saw you on mute. Do you have some thoughts on that one too? No, okay.
Are we open? Like, I think maybe I've learned the most to apply to PT from people who aren't PTs. And I don't know, it's again, I'm thinking of this project that I consulted with at USC with the Annenberg School of Communications. And I could probably get that woman to speak about the different media and how to communicate. But for me, that was powerful to work with, but I don't know if the rest of the folks would think, well, she's not a PT, she doesn't really understand. So throwing it out there.
No, I think well, I can't speak for anyone else, but I remember being at the PASS Summit. What is that, 20 years ago now? And here it was precisely to hear from outside of our own four walls, what other people were thinking about us, needed from us, wanted to do with us, whatever. So I 100% support your perspective on that.
Yeah, me too.
Otherwise, we're gazing at our navels.
Mm.
If that's the consensus rather than two people, if Sam or Bob can send me the information, like how long, format, like we can't do
Yeah.
quizzes, but that kind of thing.
We'll be happy to do that and talk about the logistics and the time, and we can coordinate that. Thank you, Marilyn.
So I'm going to go to another agenda topic, if that's okay, is other speaking engagements that people have coming up in the near future, or other conferences related to, and I know I want to be careful using the word informatics, but with this group, I'm going to say anything related to informatics, right? Especially informatics in physical therapy or rehab. If there are conferences coming up, or if you're presenting somewhere, it would just be really cool to just share with the group so that we know how that's also getting out there. Nobody has anything coming up this year that they're presenting at, okay? Then I will toss, go ahead,
Oh,
good.
Marilyn? Or Madeline?
Go ahead, Sam.
No, I would say Madeline, because you unmuted.
Oh, I presented a couple weeks ago at the Doswell Health Informatics Conference at TWU in Dallas. And I was presenting my the same thing I presented a couple weeks ago, in a couple of months ago now, in this group, but for the methods for my dissertation. So that was interesting because it was a small conference, but mostly healthcare related, a lot of nurses, physicians, some just, people from health systems within Dallas mostly. So that was an interesting interprofessional experience.
So how did they react to you? I'm curious. Did they ask you good questions? Did they all sit there and go, huh? what did they do?
No, so it's funny because I'm an educator in a PT program. And so in my I have three sort of lines of work, which are like, so the intersection of social determinants of health and informatics, and then financial literacy. And within PT, I'm like the total oddball, right? Like everyone's like MSK, neuro, and I'm like, I don't know, like let's talk numbers and social determinants of health. And then I was like, I'm going to be like such a weirdo at this conference being a physical therapist. And like, they were all my people, like all they were talking about all day long was social determinants of health and informatics and that sort of thing. So I definitely like thought I would be different. And I was like, no, actually we've all read the same books and been to the same stories. So it was interesting in that sense.
Excellent.
That's
Anyone else?
really cool. So somebody else started?
Anyone
Oh.
else?
The other thing I was going to ask if, and at any point, share any additional stories like that of recent presentations. The other piece says, last year you guys presented at the ELC. Did anybody put proposals in for the ELC for this year, or are those coming up still? Or
No, ELC submission has been closed. But Madeline, I don't know if anyone here has proposed anything related to informatics. I think it closed like a month ago.
I submitted, but not for informatics, for a different topic to ELC, and then I will be doing a pre-con. I will be doing a pre-con at ELC the day before on Thursday related to student debt issues and finance and physical therapy. So if anyone's going to be there and has a passion for student debt issues and physical therapy, there'll be a full day pre-con.
there's no data related to that, right? Okay, informatics. Yes, data. You're looking at it all the time. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, then, and if there's other conferences and stuff, bring those up. The other thing that I wanted to at least share is related to a couple of proposed rules that are out from the government. Just for an awareness for this group, and the first one comes out of ONC, and it's related to health technology, interoperability, and I'm sorry, I don't have the heading of it all. The short title is HTI-1, but it basically comes down a lot to algorithm transparency. And that's why I wanted to make sure that this group was aware of this proposed rule. If you have comments to share, I think that they should be shared. I will share a couple of high-level comments that have come up in groups that I've been involved with. One of those is related to the fact that the government is, and we think that this is related to a lot of the stuff with AI that's come out recently, right? And so some concerns with artificial intelligence. And so I'll clarify it this way first. The way it was described by one person I thought really, really well is that the FDA has jurisdiction over clinical processes, but they can't do anything. They have no authority over things that are related to pure technology. The ONC can do stuff that is more technology related, but doesn't really have authority over stuff that's clinical. And the AI area is really coming at an intersection of those two. And the two agencies are trying to figure out who has the authority to regulate in that area. And so if you were to look through this proposed rule, and if you look at some of the stuff that's in there, part of what's being asked for is, in essence, all of the algorithms related to any AI. Well, it's basically talking about any algorithms and the transparency with that, as well as with the source documents, et cetera. And if there's any changes to those things, then also having those changes being provided. So from a provider perspective, there's a concern that the burden to share all of the details of this is going to be pretty extensive. On the other side, there's some benefits, right, from the safety and the transparency of some of the AI AI algorithms that get built out by software, the machine learning that happens, and revisiting that and making sure that somebody is looking closer at those steps. The other side of it has to do with the fact that all of these algorithms, the transparency of them would then be made available on a public website with hyperlinks to all of the source and et cetera, again, for the purposes of transparency. But the problem that's come up with it from some people's comments has to do with the fact that anybody who's a developer who now has to be transparent with all of those pieces, may lose their intellectual property. And so there's some concerns along those lines. So again, as you look through these comments, there is one other comment that really came out strong with the provider group that I was involved with. And that is the fact that all of this is being asked by providers and being provider driven. Yes, the software vendors would have to do certain things, but on the payer side, and if you've read any of the news recently, in the past week, there's been a couple of things that have come out where certain payers are using AI to improve their denial rate. And that's created this huge blowback, especially with this proposal coming out, this proposed rule, in that this does not apply to payers. It applies to providers and it applies to software developers. So again, just I don't know if there's comments along these lines or if anybody else is looking at submitting comments or has any feedback or thoughts.
I pasted couple sites here as you're sharing with us. I think this is the right right path or proposal comments and kind of getting a gist of the proposed rule. I mean, proposed rule is like a dictionary.
And as you say, dictionary, just another big piece that was this aha for several of us.
Yeah.
We've always heard CDS, clinical decision support. We've thought of it in that way. That is being changed to decision support initiatives, I think it is. So it's DSI. So again, if you are a person that starts hearing new abbreviations and you're saying, where did this come from? That's part of where this is involved. Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Oh, I have no comment. I'm just trying to, I'll post another link. Just like to get all this dense information into a little more concentrated information. I think fact sheets are always helpful.
Yes. Well, and the big thing I bring it up, I'm not always sure that that folks who are developing clinician, what I call clinical decision support tools, right? Decision support initiatives. I'm not sure that people in the therapy world are aware of some of these proposed rules that would definitely impact the activities that they are doing. So again, if we just get that word out to those folks so that they're aware of this proposed rule and that they can submit comments. Related to that, there's proposed rules that have come out, the skilled nursing facility proposed rule, inpatient rehab facility proposed rule. There's the inpatient psych hospital proposed rule, which also covers the LTAC space. Inside of each of those, there are comments about quality measures and changing the quality measure process. I bring this up because ultimately CMS is working towards a digital quality measure process. And if you are doing anything in any of these areas, you do want to take a look at the specs, the technical specs for the details, for instance. So in the skilled nursing facility proposed rule, they are looking at discharge, I can't remember, discharge status. And they're looking at that discharge status compared to expected discharge status. They're coming up with the expected discharge status based upon predictive analytics at the time of admission. And so the document that goes through the predictive analytics from at time of admission is a pretty dense document, but it is something that anybody who is doing anything with software across the continuum of care, if you're looking at the quality metrics, you're going to want to look at that document and understand it a little bit further, right? So again, that's why I bring these things up here. those quality measures, all of them, CMS again is trying to move to a digital process. And when we talk AI and transparency of algorithms, they're going to have algorithms in the background that they're going to be using to look at this. And so again, in this proposed rule, our question was, well, are they going to be transparent with those if they're asking us to be transparent with everything we're doing? So
Bob, as you were talking, I'm thinking, wow, Bob must have a ton of time to be able to do all this by himself, which I'm sure is actually not true.
no.
But so that prompted me to hop on the APTA website and look under the advocacy things. And I was happy to say I at least saw health information technology as an advocacy issue. But the last time it appears that there was anything organized around informatics was 2019. And so maybe I haven't found, I mean, literally, I just like scanned quickly. So I could have overlooked something, but are you getting help?
Well, if you look at Matt's face, you'll have a fair reaction to that, right? There's some people at APTA who are doing, who are looking at things, right? Kate Gilliard is one of the people. There's things that we have encouraged related to data interoperability, and they've not all been able to be, how do I say this, Matt? They've not been able to help out quite as much as what we thought they might have originally. Okay.
Bob, I think it's fair to just tell people that your source is not APTA for all this information that you're gleaning from this. And it's because you're involved in multiple other organizations that very much are in depth in this area, that they have a much more robust staff support of understanding the issues, being engaged in those issues, and actively sharing that information. APTA has reached out for some comment letters and some feedback there, but I don't think you're going to see much from APTA since Kara left. And it's unfortunate. We've raised that issue with APTA staff and have been told that that's an area that they're interested in looking into having some more expertise in, but just to put it bluntly, it doesn't seem like a high priority for the association.
So I might make a comment, Bob. I don't know if you've had any connection with the National Association of Rehabilitation Agencies and Providers, NARA, but I've been involved in that organization for 20 years and just was in DC 2 weeks ago. They're very strong advocates, but they don't do a lot with IT and health informatics, but they would if someone just said, put it on their radar screen. We have a relationship, a financial relationship. We contract with Williams and Jensen. I think Matt's familiar with the Williams and Jensen law firm, and they've been our lobbyists and legal counsel for 40 years at NARA, and they're very connected, but not with health IT. So I can help with that if you want another avenue for advocacy for this. I think NARA would be very, very supportive of this. They do a lot of comments on proposed rules and meets. There's a joint meeting with APTA, NARA, AOTA, and ASHA monthly on advocacy. So pretty engaged if you want to connect with that group.
Sure. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is an area that we should at least start taking stock in and identifying a little Excel sheet or something of who we know there is engaged in the world, kind of two levels. One is engaged from a policy perspective, but then also engaged from a implementation perspective. So Bob, I'm sure you know exactly where my head's going right now with, we have the policy stuff that you guys are talking about, but there's also a community of PASIO and people in the data standards world, and AOTA and ASHA are now very involved in the PASIO community, and they have staff members that are participating in things. And the American Heart Association is very much involved in in data standards, and they are moving forward in a very strong way that makes me a little bit nervous as a physical therapist, just because there's not a whole lot of physical therapists that are watching what they're doing, and it's going to drive how data is captured and shared in a meaningful way across the United States. So I say all that to say that, I think that there's some things that we should take stock in. And then maybe that meeting you're talking about, Stephen, would be a good way for APTA to start recognizing that other people are taking this a little more to heart than APTA is.
So the other thing I might offer, not for this summer, but for maybe next year, is to think about whether or not there is value in bringing this topic to the House of Delegates in some way. And there are lots of ways to do it. One of which is to be, aggressive and just say the staff have to do this, which is generally not well received. But it is the truth of the matter where governance is concerned. Alternatively, there are other probably more productive ways to get the conversation going. So I would offer that as another opportunity to think about going ahead.
Yeah, it may be worth just having a call with Roger at some point in time, or Bob. I know you have, especially from your first council stuff and others. I mean, there's others of us here too that could just reach out to Roger as well, but just put it on his radar a little bit more. But I think I was the last person on staff that really was involved when things came to the House floor from an informatics perspective. And at the time, I think we had it covered. I don't feel that's the case now.
I think it's worth all of us, if we have contacts within APTA, to reiterate this message. I think within NARA, I know some folks, and Stephen, if you want to bring it up and see if it's something that they want to address further. I know Advion addresses it through the IT committee. I know through a couple of other organizations I'm involved with, Chime and HIMSS, that we are addressing things there, but I would like to see APTA more involved. Yes. I am going to, related to that, share the Future of PT Summit, just so that everybody is aware. This is going on the day before the leadership conference this year. Leadership conference is where the House of Delegates gets together, that Dion was just mentioning. Any of us can go sit in the gallery at the House of Delegates, or if you are a delegate within your state or a alternative delegate, then you would sit up in one of the chairs ahead of time. But again, you can sit inside there and see how the leadership of APTA looks at these different topics. And it brings up what Dion is discussing about possible motion to bring forward next year for this. And related to that, Dion, we started to look at some things. It was just too late this year before they were to be submitted. So outside of that, Sam, I'm going to be quiet because I brought up a couple different things. So.
No, this is a really great ongoing conversation. We should definitely circle this back. I know we got 3 minutes. I want to give you some time to give you preview of what's to come next month. So Jen Kraft, would you mind sharing?
Can I do a 30-second question? Just Madeline, if we wanted to keep a who's doing what in the Google Drive or the thing, can you help us to set that up, and we can let people know to fill that out? Just that way we can start capturing that information.
Yeah. I can do
Okay.
that.
And then the last thing I would just say is it's never too late to bring something to the House of Delegates, Bob. It just has to have a 3/4 approval to come to the floor. So 2 things.
That was great.
Sorry, thanks.
Yep, thanks, Jen.
No problem. All right, so next month we have Chris Hoekstra, who's going to be presenting. Chris is a PT and a member of this group. He's just not here this morning. We are still kind of hashing out maybe the tagline for his presentation, but he will be speaking about some of his PhD dissertation work, focusing on why PT managers fail to use technology to make decisions and how they can work on creating dashboards to help guide their decision making in their practice through design thinking and empathetic design. So I think it'll be really interesting, and hope you all can make it.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. We look forward to it. Any last minute questions? We got about a minute left. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the day. We'll see you in about a month, and we look forward to sharing the kind of all this really important knowledge sources and opportunity to look forward to Chris this presentation next week or next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hey, Bob, if I can just quickly spend 5 minutes with you, and actually, Matt,
Yep,
I don't.
Let
you
me
gotta-
stop the
yeah,
recording.
Yeah,